Hello everybody and welcome back to the Train Brothers Railway. Today is kind of a bench slash kitchen table video. This train here we bought recently and I didn't really do a kind of unboxing or reveal on the layout just because this one here was set up when I bought it for track power with a sound kit in it, but we only have one little loop that is track power. And this guy, with having 3 wheels, doesn't like going around the tight curves that we have on the track power one. So I decided that I'm going to put the Piko RC battery in the tender, and this train will be battery powered, but not from our usual revolution system. It'll be from the Piko RC controller that'll be in the back of the tender. So that's kind of where this project's going to start, and I'll take you through everything, and I'll show you the little wiring diagram. I have the paperwork here. I've already gone ahead and pulled out the sound system because when I bought this train I opened it up right away and someone has actually had a different system in here at one time, because there is heat shrinks on these wires, so they're not just one continuous wire to from the board to like say the motor blocks or whatever. So but this is the sound system we're going to be putting in, and I'll show you the box of goodies that I got to put it on this train. Alright, so this is the delivery I got. This is the Piko RC controller module. There's the number right there. And in here comes with instructions, or destructions as I like to call them. And then this is the board here. So these are all your functions that you would wire into. If I can get it to focus. That's just like a terminal strip there, and then you would have all your functions there. It's not going to focus. I'll show you guys later. And then below here is the little handheld remote control. So you have forward and backward, and then it allows you 2 functions, 1 and 2. So one could be the bell, and the other one could be like the horn or the whistle, or if you had like a smoke kit, you could turn that on and off. I'm going to still keep my smoke kit on the board because I want bell and whistle on that one. And then we also got a track stop, or a bumper, because we needed one of those for one of our stops. We also got some Piko fix just to repair some of the buildings that some things got knocked off or broke. And then this one here is a on-off charge switch, on-off charge, and this one will be able to plug directly into the battery, and then you wire it right there, the 2 wires there, into that board that I showed earlier. And then this guy here is your little charge plug. So these 2 pieces here you can mount so you'll see the switch outside the train, or you'll see the plug outside, so you don't have to open up the train to get to the battery to charge it. Everything's just right here, and then depending on the mode that the switch is in, it'll either charge it or it'll be on. And then this is the battery. Normally we like to run an 18-volt battery, but we had to go with a 14-volt battery just for pure size to be able to fit that in that little tender, because we're definitely gonna have to squeeze all this stuff in. It's going to be interesting to see how we can get this all in. And speaking of fitting all this in, the old speaker is right here, and it's a pretty big speaker, like I would say probably 2 inches by 2 inches by maybe like 1.5 inches tall. But I ordered this speaker here, and this is the smallest speaker I've kind of ever seen, especially for what we normally do and put this in trains. If I can get this out one-handed, you'll be able to see the size comparison. There you go. This guy fits in the palm of my hand, and there's the size comparison there. So that's going to help us with space for sure. But I'm just curious to see how it will sound. I don't know if it'll sound cheap or if there'll be enough like depth into the sound, but we're going to install it and see what it's like. It said it was a full sound speaker, and it's got the right ohms and everything like that, so we'll see if that works. And then we have an 18-volt charger, but this one here is a 14-volt charger, so we had to get a charger for that battery too. And we run KDs and Aristocraft couplers, so I went ahead and got some 909s because I need them for the caboose I got, that I'll show you guys as well. And then this one here, I'll be using kind of half of this pack for the back of the steam locomotive because we want a knuckle coupler on the steam train so we can pull all of our freight. But that's everything that we got here, and let's go over to the train and put this in. Okay, so I have all the components here. This is the original speaker, which we will not be using. I have the battery, the switch, the board, the new speaker, the sound system, and then this here is the other board that's kind of attached to it. So what this is that's the switch there for the smoke system to be on or off, and then that's a volume switch. And when I first kind of like bench tested this train, the volume switch wasn't working, and I come to find out that I don't know if this was from the factory or if this was from originally or from the previous owner, but if I can get this to focus in, if you can see, I know it's not the clearest. There you go, perfect. The outer two are soldered in, but the middle one isn't soldered, and it doesn't look like it's ever been soldered. And it's labeled volume. So I feel like the middle one has something to do with the reason why the volume wasn't working. But, I mean, we'll be able to solder that in, and I'll see if that makes a difference. And then, of course, these are all the functions on all this rat's nest of wire. But there's all the functions there. And those ones match up pretty much identical to these guys right here. So you can either put this board in if you want sound, or you can just wire everything right to this board here. But I'm going to be putting in the sound, so I only have to put a few things through this board and the rest of them go in here. But I still decided to take this board out because in the locomotive, when I pulled this apart, all these wires, the board was sitting right here. But in order for me to have all this space in this guy here, I have to put it here. So it's kind of going to be a little bit of a challenge to put everything in. So we're going to have to put our speaker in, which is considerably smaller. And then this board, I'm going to have to extend all the wires to put this guy here. And then this board here mounts under there. And that's because you still need to gain access through that little water cover for the volume and to turn the smoke on and off. And then I need to mount the actual RC board, and I think I'm going to put that right there because this is just, I haven't seen anywhere where they mount this yet. I did watch the Piko video on installing this, but they didn't have it with the sound system, so this is kind of all new. But I feel like this hole lines up perfectly with that hole, and then those 4 screws line up with those 2 holes and those 2 holes, putting that right there. And then that would also explain why, if you can see the board here, see how all the capacitors and the heatsink is higher, but the terminal block here is lower. And that should work out nicely because there's that little block or jet in, which is the stairs for the step for the coal tender or firewood. So that should fit in there nicely. So that leaves the RC board there, the sound board there. This guy will go up in the top of the tender. That means the only thing that I'm left with is this battery. Now, the battery I would just normally set right on top. But as you can see, because the speaker has a magnet and the battery has a polarity, I'm going to have to wrap this in electrical tape or this in electrical tape to insulate the two so that there's no interference with the speaker. Because I don't think I'm going to be able to get the battery in here or in the other side. There you go, it's sticking again. So I kind of got to play with the battery and see where it fits the best. But I all got to fit it in that little depth right there. There isn't very much depth there at all. So I'm going to get to it and rewire all this, and I'll check back in with you guys in a few hours probably, because it's going to be a lot of soldering and a lot of heat shrinking. But these are all the wires here that come from the train itself. And another thing to note too, actually, which is pretty important, is on the locomotive here, or the main part of the train I should say, I'm not going to be using these power pickups, so I got to pull these out here and here. And I gotta make sure they're not taking any power off the wheels, which I don't think they are. But I'll have to double check all that, because that'll come through the plug, through these wires, because it'll attach right here, which I do like how Piko did this. They used the plug to send all the wires, but they also put this little metal piece in that hooks on kind of like a trailer hitch, because this is actually technically pulling the weight of all your rolling stock, but then there's no additional plug, it's just all one. So I really like how Piko did that, and that's kind of one of the reasons that sold me on the Piko steam train in particular. But this is the Piko steam train here. I guess this is your first up close look of it. This guy also comes off here to get to any of the smoke relay or anything like that. The light's also in there, so that works out well. And in my opinion, the steam on these Piko engines works pretty good. This guy comes off so when you can fill it with smoke fluid. But I really do like these Piko engines. I've had the Camelback in the past before. I since got rid of that one just because I didn't really like the style of that steam, but I wanted the traditional kind of steam train look. And of course we found it with a Canadian Pacific logo on it. So I said I'm going to go ahead and make this one battery powered because I want this one to run the full length of the layout. And I didn't want to put Rail Pro in it. I kind of wanted to do something a little differently because we have a lot of trains running off of that one remote control. So I figured I'll try this guy out, see what it's like. It's relatively inexpensive, and if you're comfortable with all the wiring and all the electrical here, then I would say go ahead and try it yourself. But if not, I'd definitely find a reputable person to put it in because there is a lot going on here. But I'm rambling now, so let's get into wiring this up. Okay, so I want this video to contain as much detail as possible. I don't want to leave any like real gaps. So far what I've done is I've taken off the top of the tender. I took all the wires out. I labeled all of them with really good notes, and I got pictures as well, because pictures are your best friend whenever you're doing something like this. So I cut out wherever I could and kind of simplified it so I have my individual components. Now this is the magnetic switch pretty much. So if you have a track magnet and the magnet goes across it, this will pick it up, send the signal to the board to say, hey, blow the whistle, or hey, blow the or ring the bell, sorry. So this guy I'm taking right out because I do not want this function. So I'm going to leave this one out because it's going to be attached to one of the two functions on the bottom of that remote I showed earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this square right out because I don't want it on here and I don't want it hanging around. Nor do I want these wires in the other side, like this side of it, because it'll just simplify it and then there's not as many wires hanging out. Okay, so I went ahead and closed up the mag switch, or the contactor switch. I couldn't remove the box because it was actually part of the truck, so that's fine. As long as this guy is out, it won't read when there's a magnet going over the track or anything like that. And then I've already stripped all my wires back here. I've got all my original colors from the Piko manufacturer, and then the colors that someone extended, like they didn't have purple so they used blue, and then there was a couple of other ones here, gray and then brown. So I've got my two sets. I have to extend 6 wires to the back of the tender for this board to sit in here like this. This one will sit on those 4 screws. I'll throw that one in, and then I'm not going to put this guy in quite yet because when I extend those wires I don't want any solder to drip on this board and then short things out after it's all installed. So I'll extend all those wires over first, then I'll put this board in, and then I'll solder them in, because if I do this, or if I bring them all the way over and solder them both sides, I've just created a loop, then I won't be able to get it through this hole. So I gotta make sure I remember to put that in first before I solder all the other ones in. But then I'll be able to do the speaker, and then I'll figure out the battery, and it should be fairly straightforward after this. It's just kind of getting everything organized and figuring out what the last guy did.